The League of Women Voters of Cape Ann is the local chapter of the 75-year-old National League of Women Voters. This chapter serves Gloucester, Rockport, Essex, and Manchester. Beyond the League's work in studying and developing positions and policy and issues at the national and state level, your local league works hard at election time and providing candidate forums like this one to bring the candidates directly to you in a nonpartisan format, so you can get to know them better and make an informed decision when you vote on November 2nd. Tonight, we'll ask a series of questions to both candidates with time for rebuttal and comment. The candidate has up to 2 minutes to respond to the question, and another candidate has 1 minute to rebut a comment on the same question. The questions will be posed in ballot order. These questions, broadly covering areas in the state budget, local aid and funding, health care, and other matters, were submitted by members of the League of Women Voters, as well as the Cape Ann community at large. Now I'll introduce the candidates. Incumbent Bruce Tarr, good evening, and challenger Paul McGeary.
Good evening.
Good evening to you both, and thanks for being here.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for having us.
The first question is actually to you both. We'll get right to it. I'd like each of you to take a minute or two and share with us a little from your campaigns. You've been talking to many, many people. Bruce, I'll start with you, for many weeks. And the question is, what are they telling you? And what do they want from you as their senator?
Well, thanks, Jen. And it is a great thing to get out and talk to so many different people and to hear different perspectives about what they want for the future, what their dreams are, what their concerns are. They're concerned about a lot of things. They're concerned about having an education system that continues to offer promise for their children to realize their dreams, to make sure that it's fully funded, to make sure that it has the kind of resources that it takes to get the job done. They're concerned about having a health care system that responds to all of the different needs of people from different walks of life, making sure that we have an affordable and accessible health care system. I've heard from so many individuals about the cost of their premiums increasing every single year, every single quarter, without very much to show for it in terms of increased coverage. I've heard a lot of concern about the economy, concern that we need to continue to grow the economy locally, make sure that we have local jobs that people can depend on that will also support our local institutions of government. I've heard an incredible amount about control for the future, about wanting to manage the way that our communities develop because we're under incredible pressure to develop because of who we are and where we are. We live in a great place. People want to live here. They want to build here. We need to make sure that when we do that, we do it in a controlled and a managed way that keeps the character of our communities. I hear about the environment. I hear about concerns of wanting to make sure that we have clean air and clean water and that we have natural resources, not just for ourselves, but to pass on to our kids and their kids and their kids. I hear a lot every single day about wanting to try to rebuild the transportation infrastructure that we have and make sure that we have a Cape Ann that is livable and can meet the needs that we all have every day, whether it be on train stations or roadways or the expansion or the improvement of Route 128, making sure that we have the ability to deal with the volumes of traffic that we have and the infrastructure needs that we have as well. I hear a lot about the fishing industry, and I hear about the fact that even though it doesn't hold as many jobs as it once did, that it's the soul of our community in Gloucester, and we need to protect it.
What are people telling you?
I hear much the same thing. There's a general concern, I think, about the economy, about the direction that we're going in nationally and how that's playing out locally, how jobs are being lost or going overseas or being outsourced. There's an incredible concern about health care. People are very concerned. They're losing their health care. They're not getting the insurance they need, or even if they have it, as the senator said, your benefits go down, your co-pays go up, your premiums go up. Education, especially education at the university level, is a particular concern. As the senator said, the fishing industry is going to get smaller. The children of the fishermen need a new way into the information age society. For the children of Gloucester and Cape Ann, that often means the state university system, the UMass Lowell, Salem State, the North Shore Community College. There's a lot of concern about the level of funding that's been assigned to the state university system. Those are the big three: healthcare, jobs, and education.
Thank you. Bruce, to you. Critics question the way that local aid is distributed to cities and towns and feel the formulas are complicated and flawed. What, in your opinion, can be done in the short and long term to move toward a more efficient and equitable system of distribution?
Well, Jen, the critics are right. And one of the problems that we have are very different formulas for distributing different types of local aid. For instance, the lottery formula, which tends to be among the fairest because of the way that it looks at the distribution based on income and based on population. Now, some even have issues with that, and I do as well, but it's one of the fairest on one end of the spectrum. In the middle of the spectrum is Chapter 70. Chapter 70 is the formula that delivers education aid to cities and towns all across the Commonwealth, and it has serious flaws. Now, for a number of years, we haven't been able to fully address it because we haven't had the dollars to be able to put into a new formula. One thing that's very clear, and I've been in the trenches on this issue for a long time, if we don't have new dollars to be able to put into a new formula, it won't succeed because we have to, at a minimum, hold communities harmless that are getting amounts of aid today. But that formula looks too heavily at property value and not heavily enough at the right types of income measurements. One of the things that we started to do in the Senate this year was approve a new Chapter 70 formula that looked at average household income as opposed to median income. And that's something that I think we should continue to work on and move to get that bill passed. On the worst end of the spectrum is additional assistance. Additional assistance is a program that is fraught with inequity. It's been built upon years and years and years without reform, and it needs to be reformed right away. And I think we can begin to address that as we start to have some resources on the table. One of the things that I think we should consider about additional assistance is maybe eliminating that method of distribution entirely in favor of a fairer, less complicated formula that looks more at population and looks more at average income, average household income, so that we can understand that communities who are really in need should be getting that funding. And I would suggest to you that there is going to be a tremendous impetus to do that in the next 2 years if we continue to see a robust economic recovery.
Your response, Mr. McGeary.
Well, I think the Senator put his finger on it when he said we need new dollars. And the problem with the current aid formula is, yes, it is flawed, and yes, it does favor certain kinds of communities over others, and I think we do need to change it. But if the dollars aren't there, we're reduced to rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We need to look at the revenue source. Too much of the education devolves on the property tax. We need to develop revenue sources at the state level. Frankly, that means opposing the governor's plan to reduce the state income tax even more.
Thank you. The question is to you, Mr. Gary, on the same subject of declining local aid, with Gloucester as a very good example, having put down in its bond rating. What are municipalities to do about unfunded state and federal mandates at this point in time?
Well, the municipalities don't have much they can do. They're stuck. What happens is the feds abdicate their responsibility, the state abdicates its responsibility, and now the city or town has no place to go, except for the property tax, which is an extremely regressive tax, which has its basis in an 18th century economy in which property was wealth. But in fact, you can be an elder living in Rockport today, and you can have a house that's worth $500,000, and you may be living on $1,000 a month. So the property tax is particularly regressive. We need to look at new sources of revenue, and we need the state to pony up. It's an odd thing. In essence, we're saying what we want to do is send the money to Boston so Boston can send the money back to us. But in fact, that's a good way because they have more progressive, more equitable ways of raising money than the property tax. So I think we need to look at the whole way we structure government. Now, some of that's going to happen with Judge Botsford ruling in the school case. That will happen whether we want it to or not. But I do think we need to move away from the property tax as a source of revenue for localities, for the major expenses of schools and public safety.
Your comments, please.
Jen, I think we do need to do something about unfunded mandates, and particularly mandates that aren't productive. And I think there is something that cities and towns can do, and that's to band together to identify those things and to make the case to state government with sympathetic legislators that we need to either repeal or modify those kinds of things. I've had a couple of ideas on that subject, and one of them is to create an appeal process where a municipality could make its case to the Department of Revenue and to the Secretary of Administration and Finance that a particular mandate produces little or no benefit for that community, and yet the community has to spend money on it. I think there are a number of things that communities can do by banding together with the Mass Municipal Association, with the Suburban Coalition. I've been working with all of them, and I do think we need to say, we need funding, but we also shouldn't be putting funding into misguided mandates.
And the next question is to you, Bruce. Governor Romney and the legislature have been at odds over the governor's desire to cut state income taxes. In the present fiscal climate, would you vote for a tax cut?
That's a great question, and I would point out that not only has the governor been seeking to reduce the income tax, the voters voted to reduce the income tax to 5.0. It's currently at 5.3 because it's been suspended. I think we need to pay attention to the will of the voters. I don't think we should ever be in a position to disregard them. But I also think that we in the legislature have an obligation to be responsible. And it seems to me that we need to be mindful of the voters' mandate, but we have to be able to do it if and when we're able to do it without doing fiscal damage to the stability of the Commonwealth. One of the interesting things about that was suggested by Chairman Paul Casey today, who's the House Chairman of the Taxation Committee, who pointed out that if we change nothing, there are triggers in the current law that will automatically reduce the rate when we see enough of a recovery, when we see enough of an economic expansion. I would argue that those triggers perhaps put that day too far away, but I think it makes sense to revisit them and to look at the criteria for when we adhere to the vote that people have taken.
Mr. McGeary.
I would postpone indefinitely any rollback of the current rate of income tax in the state. I think that we are only now beginning to recover from 4 years of really fiscal damage that's been done to all the cities and towns. And I think we need to get back to where we were in 2001 and then rebuild on that in areas of education and public safety. We have 5,000 fewer police, teachers, and firefighters today than we had 4 years ago. We need to redress that before we can think about giving any money back in terms of a tax rebate or a tax cut.
And the next question is to you, Paul. The Massachusetts Healthcare Trust is a reform measure that proposes guaranteed, affordable, and high-quality health care for all residents through a single-payer system in which the Commonwealth is essentially the insurer. What is your position on this legislation? If you don't support a single-payer system, how would you address the crisis in health care?
I do support a single-payer system. I realize it would be difficult for Massachusetts to go it alone, though not necessarily impossible, and we can talk about that in a minute. In the short term, I think that we need to bring the 600,000 people that are currently uninsured in the Commonwealth into a system on a sliding scale basis, and that can be done for fairly short money. There's a study done for the legislature in 2002 said that it could be done and could be done without being a budget buster. I do think long term we're looking at a single payer system. I think that that's what every civilized nation in the world has gone to. Now, can Massachusetts go it alone? It'd be tough, but not necessarily impossible. The Canadian system, after all, started in Saskatchewan and then was adopted by the other provinces when they saw how good it worked. So it's not impossible for Massachusetts to go it alone. But in the short term, in the near term, I don't want to think in terms of years, I want to think in terms of months. If I'm elected to the Senate, I will work very hard to get those 600,000 people into the system as soon as possible, and I hope months instead of years.
And your response?
Jen, I do think we need to bring everyone into the healthcare system, and it's a question of how we do it. I think a single-payer system for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts would be very difficult, in fact, could be catastrophic financially to the Commonwealth. That being said, I did support sending that bill, the Massachusetts Healthcare Trust bill, to the Division of Healthcare Finance and Policy to get a real look at what it would and wouldn't do. Because I think healthcare is a serious enough issue that you have to be open-minded. You have to look at every possible option. And I've supported Senator Tolman as we work together to send that bill for an analysis. We're also working together on other things. One of the ways that we can